let me ask, how many of you have an LLC? I love to hear it. So if you did it yourself, you realize it's actually pretty easy to create, right? It costs $130, and you can do it. It's the Wisconsin Department of Financial Institutions, the WDFI, and I would actually recommend that instead of using a service like LegalZoom or Rocket Lawyer, you can actually do it yourself through their website. You can save money. You won't be sold other services that you probably don't need by using a company like LegalZoom, or you can come to our clinic and we'll help you do it for free. Okay. So now the idea, and usually if I ask a class, why do you want an LLC or a business entity, they'll say liability protection, right? Because it is really easy to sue somebody in our country, right? You can take 5 minutes, write up a complaint, go to the court, file it, and poof, or voila, there's a lawsuit. So that's where people go, boy, I want protection. And it's if you have an LLC, if you structure it and you treat it correctly, what will happen is your liability will be limited to what you put in the business, okay, if it works well. Now there are some really big exceptions that I want you to be aware of, all right? Personal guarantees. Has anybody ever signed a document like a personal guarantee? So two big situations where this comes up. Number one, if for leases. So if you open a restaurant, the landlord might say, I don't trust that your LLC can pay rent, it's a brand new business, so I'm going to have you personally guarantee the rent. All right, it's usually a separate page at the back of the lease. And I've seen it many times where, boy, rent, it's just making that rent payment every month is really tough. Commercial leases are oftentimes 5 years long, sometimes 10 years long. And if you're 2 years into the lease and all of a sudden you can't make rent, you personally might be on the hook for the remainder of rent payments. So you have to be very careful about that. I would say conservative in your financial projections, okay? The other big one is with loans. So if you get a loan from WIBIC or another bank, they might require you to personally guarantee repayment of that. Okay, so your LLC will not protect you in that circumstance. Another one, personal negligence. So if I have a food truck and I'm driving it on the road and I cause an accident, I as the driver am going to be personally responsible, liable. Right, so there, clearly, I need auto insurance to protect me, okay? Unpaid employment taxes. Boy, the government, they want their tax money, and they have a right to get it from you personally if you're not paying taxes properly. So you have to really stay on top of that. Failure to maintain formalities. So for LLCs, you need to file your annual report. It's one that I frequently see, where they don't do that, and the state can actually dissolve your LLC if you don't file that on a timely basis. Inadequate capitalization or insurance. So if you need insurance, if I open, a risky business like a rock climbing wall or something, or another type, or like a self-defense course, I probably need insurance, all right, of some sort. And then failure to treat the business as a separate entity. So when you form your LLC, I want you to have a business bank account. And I want you to only use that bank account for your business, all right? So have your company debit card. Use that debit card only for business expenses. And they call it commingling or mixing funds. That's where it can get you in trouble and you might lose the liability protection, okay? Any questions about this? And I want to make it a little bit more interactive too. If you have specific questions, let me know.
I have a question.
Yes.
For the LLC, is it possible to modify the LLC, like in terms of the description of the business?
Yes. So one reason why LLCs are so popular, they're very flexible. All right, and I've seen some circumstances where, maybe you have an LLC that's a couple years old, and you were using it for one business, right? So I open a spa using this LLC or my clothing brand, and then I have a new business. You can actually use that same LLC. You can change the name. It just costs $40 with the WDFI, and you can use that same one for a different type of business, or you can start a new LLC. Okay, I would recommend keep things simple. Many entrepreneurs, you don't have just one great idea. You have multiple ideas, and you want to have multiple different, types of business. Usually, it's best just to have one LLC instead of 2, 3, 4, 5. There are exceptions. Typically, on real estate, if you own homes, it might be best to have each home in its own LLC. But beyond that, it's hard from a record-keeping standpoint in accounting if you have multiple LLCs. Okay? Yeah?
Follow-up question. With the annual report, is that filed based on the calendar year or the business's fiscal year?
It's based off of when you formed your LLC.
Okay.
So it can be at different times of the year. Okay?
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm curious, with the LLC business in Wisconsin, are the other states different, or is Wisconsin where is it
It's
unique?
very similar to other states.
So if I'm here, I have an LLC here in this state, and I go to another state, for example, I'm in California, do I have to file for an LLC there, or am I already set with my Wisconsin LLC?
So,
Here in Wisconsin.
yeah, if you move, you will have to file.
Not move, no, I should clarify, I'm gonna travel, if I do some
Oh.
traveling.
If you do business in another state, you might have to file foreign entity registration. Okay? Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, so the types of business organizations, yes?
For the LLC, that's just protection for your name in the state, correct? When you go outside your state and you don't want anyone to steal your name, then that's when you legally have to get a trademark. But in the state of Wisconsin, as long as you have an LLC, does that protect your name?
Technically, it does not. So it's a good question about trademarks, which I will get to. So it helps if you have the LLC here, but it does not guarantee any trademark protection. We'll talk about that with trademarks. Okay, so the types of business organizations, the sole proprietorship, this is if I just go into business. So I personally buy my food truck, I start selling food out of it, I am a sole proprietor. Okay, it's the most simple form of business. The problem with that is there is unlimited liability, right? There's no liability shield like with an LLC. A partnership, it's me and one or more people, we go into business together. The limited liability company, which I'll speak more about, and then a corporation. And there are several types of corporations. S corporation and C corporation, these are tax terms, all right? And an S corporation might save you money on employment taxes. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. C corporation, typically larger businesses or companies pursuing venture capital financing. A benefit corporation, this is a new type of business structure in Wisconsin. And it's if you have a social purpose where you want to benefit society, that's the reason for this. And then lastly, a non-stock corporation, or commonly referred to as a nonprofit. Now, I'm going to focus on the LLC because for most of our clients, for most of your types of businesses, an LLC is probably the right fit. There are exceptions, but it's probably the right fit. For an LLC, this is just some LLC basics. So as an owner of, if I have an LLC, I am what's called a member. All the owners are called members. It's $130, as I mentioned. It's very flexible. Now, a benefit over corporations is that there's fewer formalities. With a corporation, I have to I have to hold an annual meeting. I don't have to do that with an LLC. There's other record-keeping requirements. They're easier if you're an LLC. Now, the taxation, the default is if I'm one owner of my LLC, I am going to be taxed as a sole proprietor. So I file it on my taxes on my personal tax return. If there are two or more owners, that's partnership taxation. Okay, now partnership taxation is complex. I would strongly recommend if you have a business partner, get a CPA, an accountant that's good in partnership taxation. Right? I see a lot of people where they make mistakes or they're tripped up because of taxes, so just be careful about that. Now, you can, this might sound funny, but you can be an LLC taxed as an S corporation. And usually, a good rule of thumb is if you have profit of 6 figures, so $100,000, then you'll probably save money on employment taxes if you are taxed as an S corporation. Okay?
But you can't switch over to an S corp till you make up that $100,000.
You could start as an S corporation, but you probably won't see tax savings until you are highly profitable. Okay? Any questions about LLCs? Yes?
You said you can switch what you do business as under a LLC, like from doing t-shirts or whatever to, I don't know, selling beauty products?
Yes,
And
you can
not-
have one LLC that does all sorts of different things.
And you don't have to like pay extra to do that?
You don't have to change anything.
Okay.
So when you go to the S corp and you're still a sole proprietor and you have to have annual meeting, you can have an annual meeting with yourself, correct?
Yes, so here's where it's tricky. If you're an you can be an LLC. I start as an LLC. I file one document with the IRS, and that changes my taxation to S corp taxation. So you're still an LLC, so you don't have to have an annual meeting. Okay, but you are taxed as an S corp. Now, if you start as a corporation and pick S corp taxation, you have to have an annual meeting.
And does it have to be like recorded?
In theory, yes. But
This virtually, or, I mean, video or,
no, it's called minutes, so it's literally a page that says the date, what happened, and you just keep a record of it. Yes?
What's the benefit of some people having like an umbrella LLC and then like other LLCs like that branch off of it?
So in theory, there is liability protection. So if I have a food business, I might put that in one LLC. And I have a clothing brand, I could put that in a separate LLC. So if I have a big lawsuit in my food business, then that LLC might go away, but it doesn't hurt my clothing business.
Okay, I get that. I don't know, I guess I thought that, people sometimes have like umbrella companies. So essentially, those are all still separate LLCs.
They are.
Like, is there ever an instance where the LLCs are connected together or like fall under one LLC? I don't
I
know.
think she
Yeah,
was like
so,
doing business
yes.
as something else.
But I'd say what I see the challenge with that is you're gonna need a separate bank account for all of them, and they should have contracts between them if
Okay.
they are doing business with each other. If you're Google, you can put YouTube in a separate LLC, because that's, they're a big company, they can handle that, it makes sense for them, right? For entrepreneurs, where I see, it can be hard to stay on top of your paperwork, and it's easier if you just have one LLC, typically. Things, then you start getting more and more LLCs, and it's too administratively burdensome.
Even if the businesses that are under them are like doing separate things, like they're completely separate businesses doing separate things, you don't think they should be separate?
If they are risky, then I'd say yes. So one example, if you're a landlord, I would say and you have 3 properties, it might make sense to put those in separate LLCs.
Yeah.
So if there's a fire at one, it hurts, that LLC, but not other ones,
Right.
okay? Yes.
Like, I started, my LLC was a renovation landscaping business. Okay. Now I'm venturing into food
Uh-huh.
restaurant. So, would it be a big thing for me, cause I was told to just utilize the same LLC, utilize it under the initial LLC that was for the renovation and landscaping. So would that be okay, or would it be best for me to just pay the $40 to extend, like, let's just say an umbrella, so to speak, or is under that initial LLC?
Yeah, so you can use the same one. So it's the question, is that there liability or risks with that LLC? That you don't want it to hurt your new food business. So I certainly, if you are fine with two LLCs and it's completely different, landscaping, there's risks there, people, unhappy customers, and you'll see lawsuits sometimes. Maybe it would make sense to have one other, a very different line of business you could start another LLC. But just be very careful to keep them separate bank accounts. Don't mix funds between them. Just be careful, I would be careful with that, okay? Yeah.
I know we aren't focusing on this, but can you give an example of the benefit corporation?
Sure. So, a well-known, so Patagonia, Patagonia clothing is a well-known company. They say they want to do good in the world. They want to save the forests. They want to do good for their workers. So there's companies like that where they say profit is not our primary goal. And so you can form what's called a benefit corporation, where you have a purpose that's positive, bringing something positive to the world. You're still for profit, so you're not a non-profit, but the idea is it's this separate type of business where you call it benefit corporation.
Do they
Now,
operate as nonprofits? Like,
it's
we accept donation, like, how does that?
no, so you'll still, like Patagonia, you sell a product, or you could sell a service, and you will be taxed as a C corporation or an S corporation. So you still want to make money. So it's not a charity.
So like, what about like an etiquette class? Would that fall under that, like an etiquette class for children or something?
If you say, I want to have people behave better in the world, people are too rude, or something, you can see there's some public benefit there, possibly. You can still be an LLC and do good in the world too, right? So that's where I'd say typically, because an LLC is easier to administer, I would probably do an LLC instead of a benefit corporation.
I got one question.
Yeah.
So, once you start making that mark and you start profiting, and just say the business hit 100,000 a year, or maybe over, do they have to switch over, or can they stay at a LLC?
So you can be an LLC forever, right? But I would say talk to your CPA, your accountant, and ask them, should you change how you were taxed? And they'll tell, your accountant will tell you.
Some of the biggest companies on this planet is LLCs.
Yeah, yeah. All right, now I will mention a really important document for your LLC is called an operating agreement. Okay? And think of it like your governing, your constitution for your LLC, but it's your key governing document. And there's a website, it's called Build, and I have, the link is at the end of this presentation. We have free operating agreements on it. So you can actually go and create an operating agreement for yourself. Now, one thing that I will mention that's important about this, if you have 2 or more owners, This is going to be the document that says how much of the business do you own, how do you split profits, and how are you managing the company. So it's very important if you have 2 or more owners. Yes?
If you only have one, it's not necessary, or it's still necessary?
You can't, it's not necessary, but it can be beneficial to have. It's also, if you want to pursue women-owned or minority-owned business certification, they are going to ask for a copy of this document. Okay? Any questions about it? Yes?
If you've already started your LLC and you wanted to add a second owner or add an additional owner, do you have to adjust that with the state, or can you just do it?
Yeah, so it will be with you and that other owner
And
through
doing
your operating
And
agreement.
that's all you have to do to add another person?
Correct.
You don't have to go through that online process and add,
No, the
just
state,
really paperwork.
the state doesn't care. They don't, the
Okay.
state does not want this.
Okay.
Okay, you will do it with the other business partner.
Okay.
You'll decide what are they investing, and how much ownership are they going to have in your business? Yes,
Is there an age when you're on the second person that can do that, the second owner?
they could be my 9-year-old daughter or a 90-year-old, grandmother, so there's no age limit.
Yeah, I was thinking about
Okay, other questions about this? All right, so hiring workers. So, it's exciting. Oh, yes.
I'm so sorry, I just had a thought about the, annual meeting with one person, like the gentleman was saying, can he record talking to himself? I mean, is he gonna be talking to himself on a recording, because you said ideally it has to be recorded?
No, so, I mean, like a record, like a piece of.
Oh, gotcha,
A piece
okay.
of paper
Okay,
saying that you had a meeting. So again,
Okay.
you only need to do that if you are a corporation. If you're an LLC, you do not have to keep a record, or you don't have to have meetings or keep a record of them. Okay. So, employees, now, one thing that new businesses tend to do is to hire independent contractors instead of employees. They think it's easier, I don't have to withhold taxes, I can just pay them cash. Now, the problem with that is that under federal and state law, they might actually be legally classified as an employee. And you can get into trouble for misclassifying a worker if they actually are. So if I have my restaurant and I hire a chef and they're working, 20 hours a week, and I'm treating them like an employee, legally they are an employee, so I can't just pay them like an independent contractor. I actually need to treat them like an employee. Okay?
So how would someone not call them an employee? I'm trying to get the opposite part of where it comes in, you getting mixed up of that person not being an employee working for you.
Yeah, so an example, like roofing is a business where they might hire workers and say, I'm going to treat all of you as independent contractors. I'll pay you cash. And then they are injured on the job, and they go and file a workers' comp claim. And the state goes, wait, they weren't reporting you as an employee, so the company gets in trouble.
Okay.
All right, or you fire that person, and they go file for unemployment, and the state goes, wait, you weren't treating them like an employee, now your company's in trouble. Okay, yes?
On the backside of that, why would the company be in trouble if they were an independent contractor? And the person just went and did this just based on what they wanted to do?
Yeah, it's, historically, some businesses have taken advantage.
Right, no, I get it,
of workers.
but I'm just, on the flip side, what if, why would that be like that?
It's to protect workers. Yeah, it's where, there's types of businesses or lines of work where they're more likely to get injured or to get laid off, and so it's to protect those workers. Okay, yes?
is that considering if an agreement has already been signed by those parties? So
Yes.
even if there's an agreement,
So,
they could still be treated as a worker and not a contractor?
yes, so like on my on our build website, we have an example of an independent contractor agreement. Now, if I have my chef sign that, even though it says that the chef is an independent contractor, a court will say no, that person is not. Under federal and state law, they are actually an employee. Okay, so that contract doesn't, it weighs in favor of them, but being an independent contractor, but it's not going to rule at the end of the day.
So, far as an example, so just say you got a building and you need some people to come in and do some work. The number one person that is used by everybody, a painter. So does that person fall under as an employee?
So if they're a painter and they're in the business of painting, and they paint for other people, and this is their own business, then that would be an independent contractor. Okay. Yes,
If they're a private chef though, then wouldn't they be an independent contractor?
possibly. Yes.
You
So
said
if
work for
they
anybody?
go and work, if this is their business, and they go work for other restaurants and they cater, and you give them, you're not supervising them, telling them exactly what to do, then they might be an independent contractor. Okay? What I would recommend, the law here is very confusing. The Wisconsin Department of Workforce Development has a good website with a tool for helping you identify whether your worker is an independent contractor or an employee. Okay? Yes?
This might be a little, I might be getting ahead, I might not. Are you gonna talk about the DMV number? Getting that DMV number or no?
I hadn't planned on it, but we could chat later after. Okay?
I got one question before you turn.
Yeah.
So I am gonna have to be in the process of eventually hiring somebody. And I see on there where it says volunteers and interns, but it says generally no. So, and that's what I was looking more towards, it to be an intern rather than hiring an actual employee. I'm
So it helps if they are in school.
Mhm.
Okay, so I'll have like students at Marquette, or maybe they're in high school somewhere. You say, look, you're learning by being an intern for my company. That might be okay to hire them as an intern where they are not paid. Okay?
Yeah, ask questions on this topic. Is my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that you can put your child on payroll, if they're old enough or whatever, to do certain specific things, and pay them up to, I think, $12,000 a year within your business. Is that accurate or no?
I don't know the dollar limit for that. I'm
But-
not sure, but you can certainly put them on
Okay.
payroll. All right, financing issues, I will just mention, so here's WIBIC, which is the state's largest microfinance lender. It's a terrific for a business, and so if you're looking for financing, I would say definitely connect with WIBIC.
Just to add, we have a representative from WIBIC coming in the next couple of weeks to talk to you guys.
Great. They also, you might be familiar with Kiva, and I would ask WIBIC about that, because Kiva works with WIBIC. For financing, I would just say, read the terms of any financing document. And also, if you want to raise money from friends and family, there can be a lot of legal issues with that, so work with an attorney or with our clinic if you want to do that, okay? There's lots of legal risks there. Right. Intellectual property, I know there's lots of questions about this. So the big one, trademarks, I think this is your brand. So you can have multiple trademarks. So Nike, they have the word Nike, they have the Nike swoosh, they have the Nike slogan, just do it. These are all trademarks of Nike, okay? Now, you have what is called common law trademark rights if you don't file for trademark registration. That's typically where you are geographically selling your good, providing your service. So if I have a food truck and I sell just in Milwaukee, my trademark, I should have trademark rights within Milwaukee, okay? Now, if you want broader protection, let's say I'm gonna have a second food truck in Chicago, then you probably would want to pursue federal trademark registration.
Do you
Yes.
guys help with that?
We do,
Okay.
yes, we do.
Is it costly?
So federal trademark protection, if a minimum of $250 per class of goods.
Okay.
So if I have a clothing business and a food business, and, or let's say like my food truck, I'm selling apparel, I might need to file for trademark registration in 2 classes. That would be double the cost, okay?
Is that go the same for copyright too, or no?
Copyright is cheaper,
Okay.
okay? Now, for trademarks, what I would recommend is do your own trademark clearance search. You wanna see, is there any other business out there with a similar name? Now, it can be spelled differently. They can have, and it can be, you know, if the business is kind of close to what you are doing, there's a risk of trademark infringement.
So you
Yeah.
copyright logos, you trademark your business name, correct?
So actually, no. So the Nike swoosh
Uh,
or the, you know, Starbucks symbol, those are trademarks.
Okay, so what would you copyright then?
Copyright is like verbal stuff, like written, like books and stuff like that.
Yeah, so for copyright, if I'm an artist and I have a painting, or if I take a photograph, that'd be copyright, or books. So clothing is an interesting one. If I have unique designs on my clothing, I could possibly copyright them.
So, okay, so logos and your brand is you trademark that?
You trademark that, correct?
Alright.
Okay?
What about a service, an actual service?
A service?
Yeah.
So you can trademark, so, let's say, like, you know, pest control, that's a service. You can trademark your business name for the service of providing pest control, for example. All right, other questions about?
So if we have a trademark already but wanna add another one, or I mean a logo that's trademarked and we wanna add a second one, can we just add on to that current application? Or do we need to start a whole new trademark application process?
So it depends, so there's different for federal trademark registration. You can trademark the word itself. The logo is a separate trademark.
Okay,
Okay, so you might need to, like, let's say you have a new logo and you wanna trademark that, that would be a whole new application. Or if you come up with a new slogan, you know, like just do it, you would have a new trademark application for that.
okay.
Okay, yeah.
My slogan, I have a slogan that I wanna trademark, but it's already used as a title of a book, but it has nothing to do with apparel. Now, would that be stepping on toes? Will the person who came up with the slogan be able to come and say, well, if I use this slogan for my book, you have to cease and desist, even though it's used for clothing? 'Cause
So if it's for a completely different, like a type of good or service, it's like clothing, then it should be okay. Okay? Again, so for trademarks, it really is tied to what type of business do you have?
And on top of that, that would have been more or less a copyright issue anyway,
Right.
because it was.
Yeah, it's harder to protect book titles,
Okay.
yes.
So, speaking of copyright, poor man's copyright, is that like still something that's done? You know, how you probably would, have an important document, mail it to yourself and don't open it up because the government or the post office has that date on there?
It provides extra proof. It's not necessary, but you
Okay.
could do that. So for copyrights, this is called a work of authorship. So like, let's say I have a curriculum. And, you know, I have a school, I, you know, teach kids, and I have a curriculum. What I would do there is on my document, I put the year and my business name, and then the C with the circle around it. Okay, and you wanna keep a record of that. All right, now patents, this is in inventions. And then trade secrets, this is something, it's information that only you have, that gives you a business advantage.
Like a recipe.
Like a recipe, exactly. Right, so you'll want to protect that. If you have a trade secret, protect it. Okay, yes?
Okay, speaking on what you just talked about, when it comes to the trade secrets, like recipes and whatnot, would it be best to have some, if you're gonna discuss it with somebody, have them sign an NDA?
Yes. Yes, and on our website, we have an NDA, or a non-disclosure agreement. Other questions about intellectual property? Now, some key principles for intellectual property is make sure that your business owns important intellectual property. So if you hire someone, especially an independent contractor, to help your business, make sure if they're creating intellectual property, that they transfer it to your business. I see this, for example, with websites. You know, maybe you find a high school kid or a college student to design a website for you, for your company. If there's no contract, no written contract between you and that person, they will still own the intellectual property rights to that website, what they created. So you want it in writing saying they're transferring ownership of all intellectual property to your business. Okay. Some good resources.